What's up guys, Ender Unknown here. I'm back for episode 4 of the C# text-based adventure dungeon tutorial. Let's get started. Today we're going to be learning how to serialize files and save our player data. So I'm going to get right into this because I have limited time. So we're going to start in our program class and, well actually our program file, because technically the class is down here. At the top we are going to want to be using two new libraries. The first one is system.io. The second one is using system.runtime.serialization.formatters.binary. So a lot of dots. The next thing we are going to want to do is in the player class. At the top of player class, we're going to want to put serializable. That just means that the data in the player class can be serialized into a file and saved somewhere in a file stream. So, yeah. We have to do some basic checking though first. We are going to want to make sure that we have a folder for this next to it'll be in the same directory that the executable's in. So to do this, we're just going to do if and then exclamation mark to mean not, or the opposite of, if directory exists, and then our path is going to be save, so you can name that whatever you want. So basically this means if the directory does not exist, we're going to create it. So directory, create directory, and then at the path, saves. These two names have to be identical, because otherwise if it detects saves doesn't exist and then it creates worlds or players, then the next time it runs it'll detect that saves doesn't exist, it'll try to create the whatever you named this one, and then it'll return a exception or an error. So we're going to make some new methods here, or functions. So public static void save, and public static player load, because we're going to want to return the player and use it when we're loading stuff. So yeah, we're going to start with save. So we're going to want to get a binary formatter called binform. That's just going to equal a new binary formatter. Then we're also going to need to open a file. So we're going to do file stream. File is equal to file.open. And then the path is going to be, we're going to have to create a variable for the path. And we actually are going to need to stick a player argument, player P, in the save, because what we're going to do is be able to save a specific player. Or I guess we could just use the static current player. I guess that's what we'll do. Just use current player. So string path is going to equal saves, or whatever you named the directory up there. And we're going to concatenate that with current player name to lower. Now, there might be some problems with this, because file names can only be certain things. So we might have to do some more, like, working on the name or whatever. But if a player uses a good name, or actually, okay, that's too easy to, I think, take advantage of. So instead of using their name, we're going to go into the player, and we're going to create a new integer, and it's going to be called ID, or save ID, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to leave it at ID. And we're going to plus their ID, or current player dot ID dot toString. And that's just going to make things easier. We'll start counting the IDs and stuff like that. Well, the ID we'll have to set when we create new players, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So it's going to open the path, and then the file mode is going to be open or create, because we actually need to create this file. or open it, because we're going to be overriding it or creating it. Then we need to do bin form dot serialize, and then what we want to do is the serialization stream, which is file, and then what we're serializing, which will be current player, and that's what the serialization at the top of the players here is for. So yeah, that is gonna serialize it, and then we actually are going to want to close the file. And then that should be pretty much all we need for the saving, I'm pretty sure. Now, loading is going to be a little more complicated. We're going to need a argument string, and that's going to be path, because we have to choose, we're going to have to choose what player to load. Now, there's going to be some, okay, well, no, we're not gonna need path. Load is going to have a little different. Load's a little different because we have to have the player select their save. So we're gonna actually have some console stuff. So we're gonna clear the console. We're going to write choose your player or save or whatever you wanna put. And then now we do need a list of saves or players, and that's just going to be a string array called paths is going to equal directory dot get directories at the string of at the path of saves. So what this is going to do is going to get all the paths and out of directories, or out of the directory saves, which is where all the worlds are going to be saved, or player data. After that, we are going to want to convert all of these paths into an actual file or player instance, and then the player will be able to choose one of those. So this is also very simple. We're going to create a list of players called, I guess, players. That's pretty simple. That's going to equal a new list with player as its arguments. And then we're going to run a for each loop. For each, and I guess a quick tip for for loops and for each loops, and I'm sure there are other things, you can press tab after just typing the keyword. So for each, or actually you have to press tab twice, but that's in Visual Studio, which is the program I'm using. So I would highly advise taking advantage of that. So the variable is going to be a string, and it's going to be p for path, and that's going to be in the collection of paths. So it's going to go through every path and try to add them to this list here. So we're going to get a and I guess we could probably create the binary formatter up here. Just going to do the same thing. Equals that. Then our file stream we have to create inside the loop. Equals file.open. We're going to open the path, or their p, and then the file mode is just going to be open. We don't want to edit it. Just need to extract it. Then bin form.deserialize, and we're actually going to want a variable, so player temp, and I would advise you name that something. I guess I'll show good practice. Player, what's a variable that starts with P that I haven't used? I guess I think I can do single player. I haven't used player before. We're gonna want to deserialize that. We need a serialization stream of file. And then we do have to add, it's called adding this to a cast. We have to cast it to player. So this is basically telling it that it has to take the data in this file and kind of assume that it's a player. So we'll get an error if we try to load something that can't be fit into the player parameters. And then we want to just close the file. And of course, we can do this afterward. We want to do players.add, and then just add the player. I don't know if I've done lists in mutability and immutability, but basically arrays you can't really change or add stuff to. You can change the elements a little bit, but you can't just add or take away as easy as you can with just lists. So list is just I can add a player, or if I wanted to do, I could remove a player. So yeah, we get a list of these players, right? And now what we're going to want to do is another for each loop, but this one's going to be significantly smaller. So, oops, for each player, and we can use P again because P is used up here, but this is not nested inside of this, so the variables don't conflict. So for every player in players, we're going to want to do a console dot write line their name. So I guess p.name. Now this could be a problem if the player creates two characters of the same name. So we're actually going to add a the player's ID in front of it. So it'll be ID and then plus I guess that. I don't know. I think that'll look pretty nice. So it'll put the ID and then a colon and then a space and then the player's name. So if there are two, they can hopefully figure out the ID. You guys could put all sorts of player stats here. So if you wanted to put p.coins, you could do that as well, or armor value or anything. Even if we get to it later, maybe making like a kill counter or a stats page, that all works. So that's all we're gonna do is print all these to the screen. So yeah, that's pretty nice. We can just do that. Then we have to get an input. So we're just gonna do string input. It's gonna equal the, or actually we should probably prompt them. So console that write line and please input player name or ID. So we're gonna have both, and this is gonna be kind of interesting. A little bit of, when you have player input, you always have to be a little bit careful, because I guess the best thing to assume is that they're gonna find a way to input something incorrectly, and of course that's not necessarily a bad thing always, but like we have to make sure that they can't, we have to make sure to account for the fact that a player might input a number or something like that when they're supposed to be inputting a string. So we're gonna have some logic here. Now the issue will be coming is the player could just type the name of the player as a number. The player's name could be a number, which isn't ideal, but I have a couple things that we can do to work with this. So we're going to want to get a string. I like calling my strings data when they're from a player input that's going to kind of have a command. We're actually going to want to give additional instructions. ID, and then probably the number sign, or player name. So we're going to have them type ID in front, because I think that's a good way to try to make sure that the players, that's just a good differentiator, so that they don't have a, if the player name is a number, then they can type in the number, or if they want the ID, they have to type in ID first. So this is actually going to be a string array, and it's going to equal console.readLine we're going to want to split this. And so I don't know, have I shown the split command? I'm not entirely sure. But basically it'll take this string that they input and split it by the character, in this case the colon. So if they input an ID, it's going to split it. If there is nothing, it just doesn't do anything. And the first element of the array, I believe, will be the entire string, which is kind of what we want. So now we get to do some... Actually, this should all be... Okay, gotta love when you press the keybind to accidentally stop the video. Anyways, we need to nest this in a while loop, and we probably want a boolean called b for boolean, sure. And that's going to equal true. So while b, and I guess technically, have I covered? Okay, I guess we'll cover this as an infinite loop. So while true. So infinite loops are pretty neat. They just keep running forever. But I'll show you how to break out of them. And I personally prefer this over just doing something silly like actually this should also be in the loop as well. So yeah, I'm thinking over some stuff. Choose your player. Okay, so little reorganizational. I should have done that. And you can order this however you want. You don't need to prompt the user as much as I. And of course my microphone turns off. Wow, this recording session is going great. Okay, console clear. So basically, it's going to keep doing this over and over again until we tell it to stop. So it's going to clear the console, write choose your player at the top, then it's going to print out every player in the players list and their name and ID. It's going to it's going to prompt them with a please put down the ID or name, and then it's going to wait for the response. And then we have to handle this in a try catch style. And behind catch, we're going to want to be catching index out of range exceptions. You could leave that blank to catch everything, but that's the one that we're concerned about the most, or at all. So yeah, we're going to be trying some stuff. So we have to do an if statement. I guess I'll explain try and catch. So it's going to try the code in the try block between these two, and if it comes up with an exception, as in index out of range, it'll move it to the catch code. So what this is testing for is, let's say they put ID, then the colon, and then they don't put a number. Well, there's no number to try to figure out the ID from. So basically what that's doing is the index or the array, the string array data, the 0th element is going to be ID. And we have to detect that right here. So if data 0 is equal to ID, then stuff's going to happen. Now, if it isn't, or if that's true, but we're going to be accessing data 1 in a second here, if there is no data 1, it's going to give an index out of range exception and then just prompt the user that they can't do that. So that's pretty easy to do. I hope I explained that all right. So yeah, and actually we're going to put some code in here. We're going to just tell them your ID needs to be a number, and console dot write not write line, that read key. So that just means they have to press something, and I guess we should probably tell them that. Press any key to continue. Yay. we're gonna probably be using the very similar approach. So ID is going to, so if the first element, or technically it is the first, but it's the 0th element is ID, then we're going to want to do some stuff. So we're going to want to get an integer, but first we have to do another if statement. So int dot try parse, and we're going to want to try to parse the data 1. And that's going to be out a int, and that's going to be ID. We're just going to, yeah, we'll call that ID. I don't think any other variable uses that. So if it's going to be able to parse it out, that means they properly inserted everything. Good. If not, we have to tell them that again, and I'm just going to copy and paste our code over there, and it should work. So if everything goes well, then we can output. So this out means it's going to output the ID. I don't know how to explain out. It's basically like try parse is going to return a boolean, but it's also going to output another integer if this is true. I think that makes sense. Sorry if it doesn't. You can ask me questions and I'll try to explain it better. We might be able to do a method that uses, maybe not this video, but at some point. So if that's something you guys want to see. Anyways, so we got the ID. Now we just need to get the player off of that. So we're going to do another for each loop. And it's going to be for each player, for every player in players, we're going to want to see if player.id is equal to ID. And if so, that's our player. And we're just going to straight up return that player. So we're going to return player. So yeah, if not, it's just going to keep looping. And then if we do get to down here and there's no return, well, that's going to be, that means it's time for another prompt, which is just going to be right line, there is no player with that ID. Then another read key here, and that is all good. So if it is equal to the ID, then it'll return the player. And this should go through all the players. Now we have to do the name. So at the bottom of this big block here, we want to just put else. And so that's going to be assuming it's a name. Really, the name is probably easier. The only reason they'd need to use the ID is if they had two identical names. So it's just a for, nope, not a for each. Another for each loop. For each player. I don't know what's with my typing today. It's not very good. Players. Okay. Then if the player their name is equal to the data 0, then we're just going to do the same return player as we did. And if it doesn't get through all that, we are literally just going to prompt them with this whole there's no player with that name. Now this will end up choosing the first player in the list element. So like I said, they're going to have to use the ID if there's two names. So yeah, this load code should actually be all done. We don't need to break out of this loop ever, because actually there's one more thing we need to add. But they shouldn't ever have a reason to break this unless we wanted to add like an exit in, but that's fine. We could do that. It'd just be if data 0 is equal to exit, then just break. But I guess, yeah, I guess that's all we need to do, I think. So I'm gonna save that. That should be able to load and save. Now we just need to actually have these in the actual game here. So we have to make some changes to our start code. So we're actually gonna change new or start into new start, new character, and yeah. So it's gonna equal new player. Blah 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 blah. Then I guess another thing we probably could do is we have to make sure that, or we need to add a way to create a new character, which would be, what's the best way to do that? Probably just a prompt. So string prompt, or I guess data again, that's a better variable. Console console read line, and actually we should probably tell them what they're being prompted for. Or actually, that's what we could do in the load. So we could add a that's what we'll do. We'll add another command there. That's so much better, I think. So yeah, we're gonna want a else if statement. Else if data 0, and we're actually gonna want to add something. Additionally, create. What's a character that they'd never have in a player name? I have no idea, because I don't think anyone's gonna name their player create. If they do, they have to use the ID. Additionally, create will, and then we'll just tell them will start a new save. So if data 0 is equal to create, then we'll do the whole new start thing, which I'm just gonna Control X. So new start, and we're gonna probably, yeah, we're gonna want to grab that first encounter as well. Oops. Oh, Control X that as well. So new start and then first encounter in the create. So that'll prompt the player. So new start will prompt the player, and then yeah, all we have to do left is IDing. So, and that's super easy to do. Where's our load? So in load, we're gonna load. So when we load all these paths, where do we do that? Well, we're gonna create at the top. We're gonna create an integer, or almost top. So int count or ID count. It's gonna equal 0. Or actually, we do. Well, after we set list, so right above the while, we're gonna want to put our ID count is gonna equal players.length, or it'll be count because that's a list. And what that's gonna do is, so let's say we had 3 saves, and they have the IDs 0, 1, and 2. Well, the length of the players list is 3. So then if we create a new one, it's gonna be 3. So new start, and then we're going to add a new argument to this, and we're just going to put ID count in the new start arguments. And up here in new start, we need to have an int ID, or I guess we'll just do I. Then where do we set the player name, and then current player dot ID is going to just equal I. So that should set their ID, so every ID will be unique. Now I guess the thing that I didn't consider is I didn't consider printing their IDs in order, but yeah, that's probably not important. That'll be for a different video. It's just maybe tidying everything up. It is possible to order them by their ID, but we'll do that a different day. So up at the top, we're gonna want to put load, just call the load function, and current player is gonna just equal load. And I guess the new start, if it ends up calling new start's gonna have to output a player or return a player. So instead of current player, we're just gonna make a player p equals new player, and then p.name, p.id, and every instance of current player inside of this area is going to have, yeah, I think I got them all. Then at the end, we're just going to return p. Then down at the back by our new encounter here, we're going to create a variable. I don't even know what p variable. We're just going to call it x. Actually, we'll call it new player. Yeah, there we go. Ah, my typing is horrendous. So yeah, player, new player. And then we're going to want to return first encounter. How do I want to do that? Do we want to run the encounter? No, because we need the player. So we're going to return a new player. And then the first encounter will be below load. Because we don't want the first encounter to happen every time. But I should have given this more thought before I started the video. I didn't get through this far of planning. So yeah, okay. I think I said we wanted to see the out variable in action, or the out keyword. So we're going to do out bool new player, or new p for abbreviation. So how the out thing works is we have to set it before we return anything. So at the top, we're going to return, or we're going to set new p. It kind of acts like an argument, and it's going to equal false. And the only reason it's going to get set to true will be down in our thing down here. So that would be new player is equal to true. Way back up here, we're going to do out bool new p. Then if the new p is equal to true, I think I showed this trick and I didn't want to use it too much because it's kind of confusing, but we can just use a single line and know if it's a single line command or code piece, we don't need to use the curly braces. So if new p is equal to true, then we're going to want to do encounters, not encoders, encounters dot first encounter. Pretty sure that's what it was. So if they're not a new player, this won't affect them, and it'll just go into the random loop. And if it is, they'll do their first one, and all will be good. So the last thing we have to do is giving the player a way to save and exit. I think we're just going to add that into the shop probably. So the player has to exit to the shop, and then at the shop they can exit the game. So that exits the shop, and then right line Q for quit game. Well, we probably don't want to. We don't want them to have to think that they have to quit the game. So we're just gonna quit the game. Well, you guys can figure that out how you want. I'm just gonna have it as quit because I think that's exit and quit seem pretty self-explanatory. So, yeah. Else if input is equal to Q, and if you recall, we set input equal to a lowercase number, so or a lowercase value. The string is now lowercase, so we should be all good here. So if it quits, we're gonna just call another program. We're gonna do this above. It's gonna be public static void quit. And I just like having that in the main area, not in the shop. So all this is gonna do, and again, this could be one of those fancy no curly braces expressions or if statements. We're just gonna do program dot quit, and there are no arguments, so yeah, all we're gonna do is quit there. And then what that will do is we're not gonna prompt the player. I mean, you could using the tricks that I've shown you or the code. You could add that, or if that's what you guys want to see, I don't have time to add that today. So all we want to do is just save. So we're gonna run save, and then environment dot I think it's just an exit. Then I don't know what the whole deal with the exit code is. I always put in 0. I think it's saved to a log somewhere, or could be influences something. I'm not entirely sure. 0's always worked just fine for me. So basically, the player's going to be able to quit, and then they'll be able to quit from the shop, which will save their player into the saves folder, and then the environment will exit, which just means quit, or it'll close the command window. I'm going to go test this and make sure there are no bugs. I will be back to either show you, hopefully, a working save system, or if not, to fix some bugs. Okay, couple little silly mistakes I made. Okay, so the start is I said paths is equal to directory.get directories. Why? I have no idea. That makes absolutely no sense. It should be get files. The other thing we're going to want to do is just visual, because it bugged me. And that is... Where is... Oh, it is up here. On the top of new start, just going to do console clear. Because, yeah, I did not... That was kind of annoying. But aside from that, I think it worked pretty well. It created the file. The last thing we needed to do is add a file extension. That was kind of funny. I didn't have a file extension. I guess technically we don't really need a file extension, but where's our save? It's right up here. After the ID, we should probably just add a dot level, or whatever you want to call it, dot player. Just maybe be careful to make sure it's not an existing one, because sometimes the computer will think it's something else, and that's not good. Yeah, so that's about it. Most of that was cosmetic, so from what I saw, everything worked aside from that. So I'm going to go test it, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Well, I don't really have a great way to visually show that it is working. if you followed all that code, it does work. So I created a character, Ender, to show you that that all works. I can't, the issue is I can't, if I close this, again, my headset just keeps clicking off. That is annoying. Yeah, so it does all work. I can type in Ender or ID 0, and we go into our game. But yeah, I'm gonna run away, and I'm gonna quit, and everything's gonna shut off. But I'm gonna thank you guys right now. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any ideas, I kind of don't know what to do next. I'm probably just gonna work through some more interesting or complicated coding concepts with more rooms, most likely. So maybe some puzzles, or I don't know. Puzzles are hard because it's just challenging to give them like uh added value, because they get boring after solving them like 3 or 4 times. It's like, oh, well, if I press these 4 keys, I know even if you try to randomize the answer a little bit, it's still not great. I guess we'll see how it goes. If you guys have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Ender out.